I'm going to begin. Welcome everyone, I'm Carol Palmer. I'm a product manager for Oracle Spatial and Graph, and with me is LJ Chian, Director of Software Development. And today we're going to talk about new features in Oracle Spatial Studio 20.1. So for the agenda today, I'll talk for about 10 to 15 minutes, give you sort of preliminary feel of the features, an overview, and then LJ will spend the majority of the time on the demo itself. For those of you who aren't familiar with Spatial Studio, just two quick slides for some background. Spatial Studio is a self-service web app for spatial analytics and interactive mapping to visualize results. It's a no-code environment for developing spatial analytics applications. We first came out with Studio last year. We had 2 releases. And prior to Spatial Studio's release, you really had to know something about spatial, PL SQL, SQL, Java, and that's no longer the case because it's a no-code environment. It's included with your database license. That means all cloud database offerings, including Autonomous Database and on-premises as well. Typical Spatial Studio analytical workflow looks like this. You adjust your data. So you're loading data from Excel spreadsheets, GeoJSON files, or shape files. You're importing that into the database where database tables are created. You're enriching that data by address geocoding, so taking addresses, converting them to lat longs. And we use Oracle Maps Cloud Service to do that, our public cloud service, which, by the way, comes free of charge to you when you use Studio. We then do some spatial processing, combining data sets, doing the spatial analytics. We are creating and configuring visualizations, so that's all done interactively. Then you publish your results. And you can take your results, share with others. Also, you can include them with Oracle Analytics Cloud, for example, to do further analysis. That's 2 quick slides for a Spatial Studio overview. For our 20.1 enhancements, here's what we focused on. We wanted to give you more visualization choices, so there are 2 of those I'll be discussing. More flexibility with projects. We added time with Spatial Studio, so you can view change over time, which is a very powerful feature. A new analytics category. Automated processing with Spatial Studio of spatial data so that you don't have to log into Spatial Studio in order to do that. And we have enhanced administrative functions to make handling of Spatial Studio much easier. This is we have about a dozen new features for Oracle Spatial Studio. Obviously, I can't discuss all those today, but this will be a good reference for you. If you download the slides, you'll be able to see exactly what the major features are in this release. First feature is simpler data uploading. In the previous release, when you uploaded, when you created a data set from a file, you had to just do that one at a time. So that meant spreadsheets, shape files, and GeoJSON files were all uploaded one at a time. Now that's changed significantly. You can upload multiple dataset files with different formats all at the same time. So it's a lot easier. It's less cumbersome, more streamlined, and Studio does all the work for you. It does the uploading one file at a time. We now have GeoRaster visualization. So previously, we focused on points, lines, and polygons. Now you can create and visualize imagery data, such as satellite imagery, for example, stored in the spatial GeoRaster type in Oracle database. So when you create a data set, it's similar to what you do already. So you create a data set. You normally would see tables and views. Now we have a GeoRaster added here. So you can actually add a GeoRaster table to create your data set. In this case, we have GR tab, where you can then configure single raster mode or virtual mosaic. Then you take that data set, create a map layer, and then you have additional operations you can do it for styling, which is specific to GeoRaster and raster choices as well, in terms of bands and reprojection, for example. So I'm not going to go into a lot of detail here. It's a lot, but when you see here at the top, I have a blog written on this topic. You can get more information on how to take advantage of this feature. And there are additional features as well that I'll be talking about that have blogs written about them as well. So that's where you can go for the most up-to-date information on those features. We now have true 3D visualization, and we have 3D city GML models and point clouds. So this is done through the Cesium JavaScript API, which you can see here. We're using pre-generated 3D tiles rendered by the Cesium JavaScript API. You have to be an admin to do this, so you're creating a Cesium base map. And one thing to remember is that the domain of the URL must be in the safe domains list. Otherwise, the browser will block all requests to the third-party server. We now allow custom base maps. Previously, there were, and there still are, 4 base maps you can choose from, which are listed here. But we had customers tell us that they were not able to use the public internet, that they're behind our firewall, and they really wanted to add locally hosted custom base maps. And now with this feature, you're able to do that. Also, if you don't have the situation where you can't use the public internet, but you can just host those base maps that are hosted, use base maps that are hosted on third-party servers. So you can have either choice, locally hosted custom base maps or third-party servers. You simply go, if you're an administrator, you go to base maps in the administrative console area, and you can add a raster tile or a vector tile, as you can see here. And the safe domains list, the domain URL holds true for this feature as well. We can now visualize change over time with the time slider. And this is for map layers with date columns, as well as date columns with date and time. So here we're talking about years, quarters, months, all the way down to seconds. So you have an option to add a time slider to view the change over time. You have settings here and here for a time slider. So you can filter date for range of time or a specific date time point. So in this case, you can see the difference very easily for COVID cases in the US from March 24th versus April 26th. So it's significant. So it's very easy to detect all those changes. We now enable access token support to enable command line tools like curl or postman to invoke REST endpoints directly. And you can invoke almost all Studio REST endpoints. I'm sure LJ will show this feature. To access this feature, you go to your profile, you see access tokens, and then you see the existing tokens that are available today. You see the name, you see this part of the string here, the owner. If you're an administrator, you see everybody's. If you're not, you'll just see your own. The scope will either be read-write or read-only, depending on what you want to do. In this case, there are 119 minutes left for this particular token. And when you create a new token, you give it a name, the time you want it to be valid, and the default is 2 hours. If you want to make it indefinite for token, you would just say -1, and then you would have an indefinite amount of time that it was available until you then deleted it from this particular screen. One thing to note is you need to keep the access token string and keep it safe. So you need to make sure you copy it and keep it for security reasons. You're not going to see it again. You're only going to see it once. So that's something you make sure you keep in mind. There's a new spatial analytics category. In the spatial analysis operations, we have filtering, combining, transforming, measuring, and here you have analytics. So what we did here is we tried to improve the user interface for commonly used spatial analysis operations. You can see here you have summarized by region, theorist per item. What we try to do is just make it easy so that you can just put in the parameters, a minimum amount of parameters as possible to get these spatial analysis operations going, whether it's distance, whether it's number of units. We wanted to make it easy and simple so you don't have to do any chaining of analyses. And the most optimized predefined SQL query is used, of course, so you don't have to do any coding at all. We have a concept of public data sets and public published projects. So there's a lot of public domain data out there, whether it's weather data, COVID data, crime, what have you. If you create data sets based on public domain data, you can set the permission to public. So as you see here on my screenshot above, I've taken Boston Public Schools, I set the permissions to public. So anybody within Studio or even outside of Studio not logged in has access to these data sets. They're accessed through REST endpoints, it's read access only, and they can be consumed by other apps in either a vector or GeoJSON format. Now, if I took a published project that I had, and all the data sets in the published project were public, I can then make the project public. So in this case, what you do is I would set the permission here to make it public. And then what I can then do is embed the map in a web portal or application. And what's really cool here is you can customize the way it looks. So if you want just the map, if you want the headers, if you want the layers list, you decide how you want it to look. We can now export and import projects. So when you export a project, it's exported as a zip file, which includes the metadata and the data sets. And then another user can then import that zip file. So that user does not have to worry about connections or accessing database schemas. They just have that project available to use. And it's also a good way for you to go migrate to another instance, for example, and use and back up your Spatial Studio project that way. Then we have better, or I should say more improved, enhancements for administrators in our console. It's better organized, things are easier to find, and you can also do more customization as well. We have lots of other enhancements, easily a dozen more other enhancements that we just don't have time for, but all very useful. I'm sure you'll find once you start using the new release. And with that, LJ, are you ready to?
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
Can you hear me okay? Okay, so welcome to this webinar, everyone. I will just go through a number of demos showcasing some of the key new features and enhancements to the Spatial Studio release 20.1, which just came out a couple days ago. So I'm just going to do a number of rapid fire demos. If you have questions, you can type them into the chat so folks can help answer them. The first demo I'm going to show is a custom base map. Okay, and this is done by an admin only. So I'm currently logged in as an administrator. And then you will go to the administration console, and where you can see the reorganized sections that Carol mentioned. And the two items we need to add in order to support a custom base map, which can be serving either raster or vector tiles. And those tiles can be hosted locally within your firewall, or they can be from a public service third-party vendors like MapTiler or even Mapbox themselves. So the way to do this is you click the base maps, and you can see that currently we have these 4 built-in ones, and you can just add a new base map. And again, you will be provide the choice of either creating a raster or image-based tiles, or a new base map that's based on vector tiles. Okay, so in this case, I will be adding a new base map based on vector tiles, hosted on our partner, MapTiler. Okay, so you could give it a name like this, and then I'm going to find the URL. Okay, and this is the URL I will be using. All right, so you obtain this URL from your map provider, and in this case, it's linking to a vector tile style sheet And notice that this particular vendor or provider requires a API key or access token. And we will manage the tokens separately, and we store them in encrypted form. But I do need to get that right now. Okay. And I will make sure to revoke this after this demo. All right, so that's it. You enter the URL and you enter the key, which is securely managed by Studio. So let's do a quick view. Well, it's not working. And the reason is that in Studio, everything is under the control of content security policy, meaning, if you added a new base map, which is loading resources from a different domain than what are already known to Studio, then it would be blocked. So the way to work around this is that you go to the safe domains. This is basically a white list of domains that are known to Studio as safe. So you will be, hold on. So you need to add a new safe domain for this particular domain. So you can copy the domain portion of this new base map. Okay, and you pick the type of resources you want to be able to load from this domain, and then you save the changes. After you do this, make sure to refresh the browser window, because that's the only way to pull in the new set of content security policies. Now, if you go back to the base map, and if everything works, you should be able to see the new base map we just pulled in from map title. Okay, so that's the way to add a custom base map. Similarly, for our 3D visualization, you can add base map for that as well, but I will not be showing that here. So now, if you go back to open the project, you should be able to use that base map in your map visualization. So in this case, let me change this to my new custom base map. Okay, so you can see the new base map is being displayed here. Okay, so now that we are already here, let me introduce another major new feature, which is this time slider. Okay, so what we are showing here are earthquakes over the last 12, 15 years. And it's all with the magnitude of 5 or more, so the major earthquakes. And the way this time slider is added is by going to this map visualization settings, and then you will see this toggle if your data set has a date column, right? So let me look at this data set properties. All right, so if you look at the column list, we should have a date typed column. Okay, so this is the event date, or the date and the time that particular earthquake happened. So if Studio sees a column with the date type, then if you open the settings of the visualization, you will have this option to add a time slider. So in this case, I have the time slider already, and you can further customize this time slider itself so that you can define the unit of travel along this time dimension. So in this case, as you drag this circle around, on this axis, it's actually stepping in months. Okay. But if your time resolution is much finer in your particular data sets, then you can choose to step through the time slider in seconds or minutes, and essential. Okay, and you will also see a warning there. It's just that currently, this feature is still kind of experimental. And we noticed in some cases, if your data set contains a huge amount of records, then this time slider and filtering may be slow. So those are the things just to watch for. And we are continuously improving this particular feature. So let me just, if you drag this time slider, you can see the earthquakes being filtered to that particular month. Okay, you can go all the way to last month, and if you click here, it's a magnitude 5.3 earthquake somewhere in Mexico, and it's occurred on November 13th, right? So this can have a number of use cases. Okay, next demo.
LJ, there was just a question. There was just a question. Can you add more than one time slider? You can also just answer it now.
No, right now we only allow one slider. And this slider can be synchronized across different viz. So if you have another data set with a similar time scale, and then that one can also have a time slider. And as you drag one, both will be going through the time axis. So that's the support. But in a particular map viz, you cannot have more than one time slider. And it can only be for one of the layers. So in the map viz, you can have more than one layers, correct? And then, if, multiple layers, each having a date column, you can still only pick one particular layer to display the time slider for. Okay, but if you have, additional requirements, just let us know and we will consider in the future release. Again, this is all new and we are still experimenting. Okay, so the next demo is 3D point clouds and city models. So this is a new visualization, and currently it is only for pre-created 3D tiles. So folks probably know that in Oracle Spatial, inside the database, you can store huge amounts of point clouds and other 3D data types like city GML, city models. So currently, this release of Spatial Studio does not directly support the 3D data stored in your database, but we are working on it. What we are supporting with this release is that if you already have 3D point clouds or 3D city models generated as 3D tile sets, then those 3D tile set files can be uploaded to Studio and be visualized inside Studio. Okay. So this is one such project where I already uploaded a pre-created tile set. So remember, you cannot just import arbitrary set of point clouds in arbitrary formats into Studio. It has to be in a particular open standard called 3D tiles. And here we are looking at one such point cloud tile set. Okay, and this is a different visualization from the normal map visualization. And this is the specifically created for point clouds and city models. But the navigation and visualization is similar to the regular map viz. Okay. So this is one large point cloud with a couple hundred megabytes of data. And currently there is not a whole lot you can do besides seeing them displayed. You can zoom to layer, but in the future release, potentially we could be adding some 3D analysis there. Okay, so now let me also show how to actually create a new 3D data set from scratch. So if you look at here from the create data set, there's a new option from to create a new data set from 3D tile set. And in this case, you could either upload your tile set in a zip file if it's relatively small. But in most cases, 3D tile sets are pretty big, so they're in the from a couple hundred megabytes to a couple hundred gigabytes. So the best way is to manually FTP them over to the server where Studio is running. And then from here, from this UI, you tell Studio where you uploaded the tile set. So in this case, I'm going to display this New York City model. And what I'm specifying is the root folder for the uploaded or manually FTP'd tile set directory. And then in the standard 3D tile set definition, there is usually a tile set.json file, which contains metadata describing the tile scheme and how the tiles are organized, and all those information are contained in this JSON, and it's created by whatever tool you used to generate those tiles. Okay, so if I click OK here, then Studio will be creating a new data set based on the tile set we uploaded. Okay, so we already have it here, create. So you notice that there is no connection for it. Again, for the 3D tile sets, we are not storing them into the database, and we are not reading it from out of the database. It's purely stored on the server disk system. But to visualize it, you just create a new project, and you can see this is the new visualization. So if you look at the visualization tab, you will see this new visualization, which is exclusively for 3D data. So now you just similarly drag the data sets onto this map. And if you zoom in, you should start seeing the 3D model of the city data set we just created. Okay. So again, this is currently for visualization only, but we are considering adding additional functionality to perform spatial analysis. Okay. So the next demo is about GeoRaster. So like Carol mentioned, you can now create, actually, wrong click. You can now create data sets based on a GeoRaster data model stored in the Oracle Spatial. So if you didn't already know, GeoRaster is one of the advanced geospatial data types and data models supported by Oracle Spatial. So in the database, Oracle Spatial can manage hundreds of terabytes of remote sensing or satellite imageries using the GeoRaster data model, and the database can efficiently manage, index, and query, and even do image processing on those huge GeoRaster data sets. So in this case, if you already have GeoRaster data in your database, and then you wanted to create data sets for one of them, you should see the models show up in this GeoRaster tab. And then you can just create, okay, so I already have one. And you create them like usual, but there are some additional options for defining what is going to be displayed as part of this new data set. This is due to the nature of the GeoRaster model stored in the database. So you could either pick a single GeoRaster, or you can choose to display a virtual mosaic. Okay, so I'm actually not going through this since I already have a GeoRaster dataset created here. So let me just visualize them. So again, this uses the regular map visualization, and you just drag the GeoRaster dataset onto the map. It zooms to the area. And if you look under the settings for the GeoRaster, there are some things you can change, like opacity of the raster, which is overlaid on top of the background map. And there is a separate tab for raster-specific settings. So for instance, you can map different bands or channels in your GeoRaster or remote sensing imagery, and you can map them into the red, green, blue image channels or bands for display purposes. So if you choose a particular band from the raster data and assign the same to all three color channels, then you effectively get a grayscale raster image. And there are additional options or parameters you can tweak, which are mostly related to the display and the sampling during the raster visualization. So again, refer to the blog for more details. But we are definitely going to further enhance the raster layer operations, so to even support image processing, just like you can do spatial analysis on the vector datasets. You should be able to do image processing right here on GeoRaster datasets. Okay. Next, I will demo a few of the more advanced analytics. So like Carol mentioned, there are a number of very commonly requested types of analyses, like aggregating data points within my regions, so I can get a count for each region based on the number of, let's say, earthquakes or sales offices. So that is a very common spatial analysis, but it's kind of hard to formulate and to perform in the previous release of Studio. So we added a few what we call predefined or already optimized analyses that you just need to fill in a few parameters and you will be all set. So the first one is I'm going to do a count of earthquakes by country. Okay, so I'm opening a existing project where we are showing the earthquakes from this year, and then we also have all the countries displayed. Okay, and then again, I wanted to get a tabulation of all the earthquakes by country, see which countries were hit the most. So obviously, this is just a story I'm making up, but you can easily imagine these could be viruses or any other type of data sets that you wanted to aggregate by country or by other types of regions. So the way to do this is you go to open the spatial analysis menu, and you go to this last tab where you have this option called summarize by region. Okay, so if you click this, and we can call it or let's just say earthquakes by country. All right. So for each country, we want to get a summary of the earthquakes, and then the aggregation or the count is going to be stored in this new column called count. So we are basically creating a new analysis or a view, and the view is based on the countries, but it will have an additional column containing the count of all the earthquakes within that particular country. All right, so let me run this. So you can see that all you need to do is fill in the dataset name and the column name you want to use in the result. Okay, so we should have a new analysis created here. Let me first validate that it actually contains count value. So I'm going to create a table visualization since I just wanted to look at the columns. Okay, so if you go all the way to the end, you should see this new column. And let me sort this by the number of earthquakes. Okay, so we can see that the top two are USA and Puerto Rico. Okay, so now what I can do is I can remove this and hide these two data sets and then visualize the count value by country. Okay, so if you look at this, right now you're just seeing the countries, just like before, but you could change the color based on data. In this case, I wanted to use the count to drive the okay, I'm regenerating the bins. So again, you can see that I'm color coding the countries based on the number of earthquakes that occurred. So that's one example. Now let me go back. So one thing, if you already used Spatial Studio before, and you may notice a difference here in terms of the UI organization, is that we no longer have the concept of active and active or working project. So anytime you wanted to leave this project, let's say go back to project list or to the dataset list or the connection list, and then you will be asked whether you wanted to save your work. And if you discard, then that's it. Whatever you did here will be gone. So there's no way to go back. So that's just something to keep in mind. One of the major reorgs of the UI workflow. Okay, so the next analysis I want to do is, instead of aggregating records by region or country, I wanted to aggregate tornadoes by distance to a particular dealership. So in this case, what you're seeing here are two data sets. One is the tornadoes, and they're showing as path. So each line indicates the start position of a particular tornado and where it ended. And all the blue dots are Ford dealers in this region. So looking at this, they look pretty busy, and it's hard to tell which dealership is more susceptible to tornado, occurring near them. So, but we could do an analysis, like using one of the new analytics or advanced spatial analysis. So in this case, I wanted to summarize tornadoes within a particular distance to the dealership. Okay. So I can rename this, and for each dealers, I wanted to find or count the number of tornadoes within 5 kilometers. And I wanted to summarize over the tornadoes from my tornadoes data set. Okay, so again, you know, you can easily do this by filling in a few parameters. So let's see how this looks. Okay, so we are done. Again, you know, I wanted to do a quick validation by using a tabular visualization. So this is the list of all of the dealerships. And if you look at the newly added aggregate column, you can see quickly, you know, see which dealerships will get, you know, has been hit the most. Now let's actually visualize this. So let me hide the original dealership visualization. Okay, so you still see the same location, same dealers, but what's different is now you could actually visualize them by the number of tornadoes that occurred within 5 kilometer radius of that particular dealership. Okay, so I'm using the count. Again, I'm regenerating the bins from 1 to let's say, you know, 40. So the reason I know this value and the reason, you know, we didn't populate these value correctly is because for analysis, we normally don't gather the statistics of every column. So that's something we are definitely going to enhance in the next patch release. But currently, you know, that's one of the limitations. Again, because when you create analysis, it's a view. And for views, and it's a temporary view in most cases. So we normally don't spend a whole lot of time in the database trying to go through each and every record in that view result set and then figure out the min max value of each column, because that can be potentially a very expensive operation. But, you know, we have some ways to improve and enhance that in the next release. So right now, that's what I'm doing, because I looked at the tabular data visualization of the view or the results. So I know the min max values. Okay. So I just changed the radius of the dealer based on how many tornadoes were within that particular dealership location. Okay. So that's the template analysis. Okay. So next, I will just quickly mention that you can you see this new option, import project. Okay. And what this does is that you could export a project from one Studio instance. And what this means is that Studio is gathering all the data sets that you added to this project, and also capturing all the metadata information, like how many visualizations were there in this project when you export it, and then what are the layers in each visualization. So all these metadata plus the actual data for each data set. So the actual rows of data, all of them will be packaged up and exported in a single zip file. So once you have this zip file, and let's say you wanted to share this with a colleague who is using an entirely different Studio instance, then you just need to send this zip file over and they can just do an import. And then once they import this, they will have exact same project, okay, without having to recreate any of the visualizations or adding this time slider and all of those. So everything will be kept just like when it was exported. And so what happens behind the scene is that Studio, on the new Studio instance where it's importing, it will check the target connection, and then to make sure that there is no table or data set with the same name, same content that's already there. If it detects any existing data set or table with the same name, then the import will not go through. So that's just something you need to keep in mind. So this is mainly for sharing a, already made project or for backup purposes. Okay, next I would demo the new administration console. Well, not demo, just showing you the new sections. So we organized them into a few sections, and it's easy to imagine that we'll be adding more and more to various sections on this page. So if you look at the generals section of this console, you can set the geocoding service URL, and you can set the web proxy, which is typically used by the geocoder in case the geocoding server is running outside your firewall. And there's also a neat little feature where you can change the branding of your Studio instance. So if you wanted to customize this, you can say, this is my own personal website, or my organization wants to be named like this. And then you just need to add a new banner icon, and you save changes. And then if you reload Spatial Studio, it should reflect your new corporate branding. Okay. But for now, let me go back and just revert that to the default. All right, so all is good. And then a few additional items here. So this one, the built well-known text index. This is mainly for when you're uploading a shapefile and we are doing the automatic spatial reference ID matching. So the SRIDs needs to be set correctly for the shapefile data to be properly displayed or processed. And that particular matching process is using a text index of all the SRID references that a particular spatial database instance contains. So if you added a new custom spatial reference to your spatial database and it has a new SRID, but Studio is not aware of that. So in order for Studio to be synchronized with the new spatial reference information, you just need to rebuild this index, okay? And then this tab, system status, it's been there forever, but I just want to mention a few things like working directory. So these are new additions. This tells you where, Studio is storing some of its logs and uploaded or downloadable files. Okay, so those information you can get from this tab. And the logs is similar to before, and you can load the logs from the server side. And you can customize and filter the logs by the logging level. And this one is just to refresh. You should normally never need to do this, but in some situations, you can refresh the in-memory metadata cache that Studio is using. Okay, so and we already mentioned the safe domains and the base maps. On the CSIM base maps, again, it's similar concept. You just need to, you can add additional base maps to be used by the CSIM or 3D visualization. Another thing I wanted to mention is that we also added a function to validate your geometries stored in the database. So if you have an existing data set that is not displaying correctly for some reason or not working in your analysis, then maybe some of its geometries are not valid, like a polygon having the borders crossing itself. So from this dataset properties, we can run a validation, and this actually runs the validation logic in the database. And then if there are issues, you should see them. So we don't have the capability to actually fix the geometries, okay? But it's more for information purposes. So you can see that there are a few geometries where the polygon boundary crosses itself, or a number of them with the wrong orientation for the interior-exterior wings. So again, these are for information, and you can rerun the validation by copying this SQL text, or to view the results stored in this temp table. Okay, so we are almost towards the end, but I do have two more items I wanted to demo. One is the access token. The other is public datasets and the public published projects. So for that, I'm actually going to switch to a different user. So far I've been logged in as admin, just because as an admin, I can see everyone's dataset. You can see that there is a little username attached to the dataset name if this dataset is not created by the currently logged in user, which in this case is the admin. But I wanted to use a different studio user, which is a normal user, okay, a non-admin user. So I logged in, and then, so the access token, okay, so the access token is a OAuth 2 type token. It follows the JWT standards. And with this token, you will be able to basically invoke most, if not all, the REST endpoints of Studio to do some processing, like validate a dataset, or even create a lat-long function-based index on your datasets, and to also publish or export datasets, and even to do spatial analysis. So all from command line or from a script using tools like curl or Postman. Okay, so before you can do any of that, you need to know two things. One, the REST endpoint, what it actually looks like. And second is the actual access token. So for the REST endpoint, one trick is obviously to open a network tab in the browser. So as you are doing things like get to the properties, you will see the network request Studio is sending to the server. And then you can copy the same request and change one piece in the path in order to use that in a command line. And in our developer's guide, we also listed the whole set of REST endpoints that you can invoke. So that's in the developer's guide. So, okay, so for this demo, let me first create a new access token. So to initiate that, you just click on the profile menu and then access tokens. So here you will see if there are existing tokens, you will see them here. And you can also revoke them by simply deleting an access token. But let me first create a token. Okay, so you give a name, it can be arbitrary name. And then each token must have a life cycle, or the lifespan. By default, it will be valid for 2 hours. You can change to whatever you want. And if you enter -1, then this token will be valid indefinitely until you or the admin revokes it from this list. And the scope is, normally you should only give out tokens that are read-only, so they cannot use the token to like delete your data set or mess up your analysis. But if you know what you're doing, and then obviously you can also have a read-write scoped token, which is what I'm doing here. So it's creating the token, and this screen is very important, mainly because the actual token string itself is only ever going to be displayed to you once in this screen. Once you copy it, it's gone. I mean, it's gone from the display, okay? Studio will still understand this until it's no longer valid. So you must copy this, and you wanted to save it somewhere. Save, okay? So let me save this. All right, so I have the latest token saved. Now let me go back to the list. So you can see the list, the names here, and we only show the last 8 or so characters of the string. So Studio itself doesn't even store the entire access token, which is why it's important to copy that in the first screen when you see it. Okay, but obviously you can always go back and delete this, and then whoever, even if they still have the token, they will not be able to invoke anything from Studio using that token once it's deleted from Studio. Okay, so I have the token. Now what? So now I can do some command line curl stuff. Okay, so let's say I have a data set which contains longitude, latitude columns, but it does not have a spatial index on those 2 columns. So which means it cannot be used for map visualization. So you can either, from the UI, create a lat-long index, or you can do the same, but from the command line, okay, using the access token you just got. So to do that, you first need to figure out the REST endpoint, which is like this. And then notice, pay particular attention to this. So if you're looking at the request in the network tab live as the browser is sending those requests, it actually is, this particular path segment is called API/v1. But in order to use this with the access token, it has to be OR/v1, okay? But now you have this REST endpoint, and you need to know the data set of the ID of the data set you are creating the function-based index for. So I already have it here, but it's the same, okay? You can get the ID from the properties dialog. Okay, so let me just replace the ID with the actual ID value. And then you need to add this header, authorization bearer token. So, and then replace this with the actual access token you just got. Okay. I hope all of this works. Okay, so now you just copy everything. Again, this is a post type request because you are changing the state on the server side by creating a function-based index on that particular data set, and you're modifying that data set to be valid for display on a map visualization. So I copied the whole request. Let's go to the command line and paste in here. So fingers crossed. Okay, So maybe there's some weird stuff going on. All right, let me try again. Okay. Let me revoke this token. And we just created a new token. I think this something to do with Windows terminal not recognizing or tripping up by some special characters in the token string. So I just copied the token. And let me copy it here and copy the dataset ID. All right, so let's see if this works. I'm just going to try again if it doesn't work. All right. Yeah, it's wrong.
Well, at least we have the blog they can refer to.
No, yeah, so actually, let me come on. Yeah, I was entering the text file as the command, so that's the issue. All right, so again, okay, I already submit this request and we got the response. And because on the server side, when you create a lat-long index, it actually started a task. So this is the response you get. But this tells us that this request is submitted correctly, and the server is already doing the actual index. Now, if we go back here, if we do a refresh, you can see, you know, this one now is able to do visualization because it has a spatial index created for it. So if you cannot just drag it over here and see the points, okay? So similarly, you can do you can issue other commands like to get the properties or to get the GeoJSON data for any data set, or from the command line, or from another program, you know, from another web application where you wanted to display the GeoJSON data of a particular analysis, and you don't want it to make that completely public. So the way to do it is to embed a access token in that third-party web application, and then you will be able to stream or load the GeoJSON data out of the Studio instance using that access token and display that GeoJSON data in your separate web application. Okay, so that's access token. The last item is public dataset. So let me go back to the dataset list, and I have the earthquakes. So this one I'm logged in as the Austin, and because this is completely public domain, there is nothing private or sensitive, and I can make this to be a public data set, okay? And then if I create a project with the earthquakes and save it, save this project, and then I can publish this project. All right, I'm publishing this. So when you publish a project, basically you snapshot the project, and this is fixed to that particular state of the project. And because this particular published project contains only one data set, and that one data set itself is public, and then you will be able to change this project or published project itself to be a public, right? So it's public published project. I know it's a handful of mouthful.
A lot of keys.
Yeah. So what can you do with this? Well, you can actually send a link to your public published project to anyone in the world. And you can customize the link if you only want the application header, but you don't want the project header or even the layer list. Okay, so all you want to show is the project with the map visualization and the banner. So you can do that, and then you copy it. Okay, now you have the URL. Let me use a new browser session, which is completely new and private. So this session is not logged into the studio, but I have the URL. And because it's public, and anyone in the world will be able to see this project. But there's no, you can zoom or pan, but there's no layer window. All you see is this application banner. And you can even remove this banner with only this map visualization. So conceivably, you could embed this in your third-party web portal or web application. Okay, and it's all going back to the studio to get to the data as you zoom in, zoom out. With that, we can wrap the demo portion up.
Okay, there was one clarification. Oh, thank you, LJ. Well done.
Yeah, go ahead.
There was one clarification that David wanted to mention, that you can use time slider from multiple time columns in one layer. So I don't know if you want to add to that, or David, you want to add to that?
There was the question about multiple time sliders, and LJ, you did explain the answer to that, but there was also the ability that I don't think we did show, that if you have multiple time columns, multiple layers in a map, and there's multiple time columns, they can all be used together in a time slider. So if you have a time slider, it will let you select multiple time columns, and then as you move the slider, all of the layers are filtered and controlled by the single time slider. I think that's what the person was asking.
Okay, great.
Yeah, thanks for the clarification.
Okay. All right, well, we are over, but thank you for attending. If you want to get more information, we do have a Go to Spatial Studio page, which actually links you to everything. FAQ, where you can download, you can look at the blogs. The blogs I mentioned, you can go from there, or here's the blogs URL here. Also, we have a lot more information, as you can see here on this slide. So thank you for attending. This will be posted. I'll have the slides posted as well as the recording. So, and if you have any future questions, any more questions, feel free to contact me directly, or go to the landing page and ask questions there. Thanks very much for attending.